Real estate people will be the winners in this type of market. Operations is where you're going to get the greatest percentage of your return. In the last cycle, when we had low interest rates for 20 years, in that cycle, 70% of your gains was cap rate compression, 30% maybe was income. Now it's going to be exactly the reverse, where the operators that know how to squeeze the last dollar out of NOI, the way you're going to make money is growing the top line, not just saving money at the bottom line. And you need to create your own demand. You can't take the market. You need to make the market.
Today on the self-storage report, we are talking about the changes happening in self-storage. You'll get the David Bowie reference in a moment. You can see our special guest here. Hopefully we have him. He's live in New York City. We've been dealing with some traffic issues in New York. We're going to have some fun today. It was literally almost a month ago today that our guest was speaking at the California SSA Napa event. Did an absolutely outstanding job. So we're going to dive into what's happening in self-storage and CBRE across the country, maybe even the globe. Spencer, having a little bit of audio issue here with you. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. You're breaking up just a touch, but I'm in New York, man. If that's my biggest problem, I got no problems.
You got no problem. Is that a David Bowie song title, by the way? So yeah, you got no problems.
No, that's what my great grandmother used to say. Audio problems? You got no problems.
So anyways, it was about a month ago. He used David Bowie references throughout the presentation. If you're somebody out there looking for a speaker, you got an organization, definitely reach out to Spencer. He just absolutely crushed it. This is the Self-Storage Report. Subscribe to the channel here. You can be the first to know these great interviews and content that's coming out. Spencer, we really appreciate it. I want to give people just an idea of your titles and your backgrounds. We're going to kind of go big picture, and then we'll whittle our way down into California self-storage. So global client strategist and senior economic advisor, CBRE, chairman of the Real Estate Roundtable Research Committee, which looks at DC and one of the brightest, best of all real estate across the globe. And they host a podcast called The Weekly Take. So let's just start big picture. You're sitting down in these meetings, fastest, brightest in real estate. What right now for people across really the country and the globe?
Yeah, I just got back from Europe. I was in Europe yesterday. I was in London. I was in Belfast. I was in Dublin. And I was there both on business and pleasure. I did take my son to play golf, but I also met with dozens and dozens of investors, including one of our sister companies, the CBRE Investment Management, talking about everything we're going to talk about now, about where's the money going and why. And I also, when I'm at many conferences, I meet with the big occupiers as well, which is less relevant for self-storage, but very relevant for things like industrial outdoor storage and other sectors. I'm very fortunate in that I travel every single day and I meet with the biggest investors to not just understand where they put their money, but to advise them on where to put their money, what the trends are. And sometimes, to give you a direct example here, space like life sciences has gotten beaten up over the last few years. One of my best ideas right now is life sciences. Let's face it, self-storage has had a tough go of it the last couple of years too. Great place to put your money because the market's going to get better. It's going to get better as people are able to move their single family homes, which is a big driver. We've also seen a big fall off in new development. So the existing supply is going to tighten. And it's still largely a fragmented market that you can aggregate some of the so-called mom and pops into institutional grade stuff. So I'm bullish to be on a self-storage show, and let's rock and roll, Chris.
Awesome. I want to give you a huge shout out here because it was 3 years ago, I think, or so, that you actually spoke at the California self-storage event. And you said something I think for many years they shut down when they heard you say it. So I want to play this. This was a month ago on your podcast. Dr. Henry Chin was on. You guys talked about something that you said back in Napa 3 years ago. So I want to play this and then just give you a chance to kind of, gloat, if you will, and then talk about what you're seeing and hearing from investors.
To my surprise, Bay Area and San Francisco, we are seeing closer to 10% of rental growth in Q1.
Well, Henry, I got to tell you, this is not the pat myself on the back moment, but on this show, I've said multiple times 3 years ago that San Francisco was the most undervalued market in the U.S. And lo and behold, multifamily is killing it there. And the reason is there's no new supply.
Exactly.
So, Spencer, again, you said that in Napa, and you could feel the room kind of like, San Francisco, what are you talking about? So I guess talk about what's happening, what you're seeing in California right now.
Yeah. So California, a lot of people say, listen, I'm in Manhattan right now. Let's just make an analogy here. There's some people pretty negative on Manhattan. Not me. I'm extremely bullish, particularly in the multifamily sector, because there's no new supply of market rate housing. And I'm actually not bullish that they're going to put a lot of new affordable in either. Same thing in California. Sometimes your best friend in any development business is a difficult zoning board. It's somebody that prevents the others from building. It helps your existing supply. And if you can get through that, you can build to your advantage and have the best stuff in the market. So, but California is a dynamic market that is had its challenges in San Francisco, in Los Angeles. But I'm doing an event next week in LA. And what am I doing it on? The revitalization of the defense business, of like putting up rockets and things related to that. California is the market of reinvention. And it is right now a good entry point because there is some of the negative noise about some of the challenges of taxation, some of the challenges of ease of doing business. To me, those are the things that keep a lot of the others out, and you can come in at a better value.
So I was at a Stanford professionals in real estate event yesterday. As a matter of fact, after the video came up talking about everyone understands the challenges of LA, but yet we still got aerospace, defense tech. So these people are saying, hey, look, this could be an incredible opportunity with what's happening right now, especially when you look at the Long Beach port, LA port, San Pedro. Thoughts?
Yeah, California is bigger than 99%, maybe not 99. It's bigger than 90% of the economies around the world. All right, California is a big place. It's got 40 plus million people, and you can never count it out. But for this is a self-storage show, so I'm going to get to that. There is no segment of commercial real estate that is more hyper local than self-storage. Some forms of real estate, like grocery anchored retail, might be 3 miles. Then you have power center might be 5 miles. Self-storage might be a mile. In fact, I'm here in Manhattan right now, and one of the guests that we had on my show before, Liz Schlesinger, she's the CEO of her own self-storage company called Merritt Hill. She says people like to see their units. They like to drive by it every day. That's as local as you're going to get. And so that's why, even if there are segments of the California economy that are suffering, and let's face it, downtown Los Angeles is suffering, but Century City is doing great. And then you see some of these areas further out that they're beginning to rebuild some of the manufacturing base. These are the areas where the economic nexus of activity is going to require all forms of real estate, including self-storage.
So I'm going to ask you a few questions here in one, if you don't mind. You can take them one by one, or I can come back to them and just re-ask if you'd like me to. But I want to talk about it in the context of, you sound somewhat bullish on California, yet you're sitting down, you're just in Europe, you're sitting down with global investors. And yet when you look from a political standpoint, I don't want to talk politics, but that scares a lot of capital out of the state. When I talk to real estate attorneys and different people, are like, look, I got a lot of clients that are investing, but it's not in California. And so I want to get your thoughts on what are you hearing from investors in California, maybe one or two, and then in the context of now we got a new Fed chair. You see the 10-year wanting to sort of pop up. Where do you think that goes, and what do you think that means for cap rate?
Well, look, I'm not going to tell you the 10-year is going to go to 5 or it's going to go to 4. I'm going to tell you it's going to be higher for a lot longer. I'm also going to tell you that the short end of the curve is going to be higher for a lot longer. And what does that mean? It means that cap rates aren't coming down. It means that cap rates are probably going to stay about where they are for much longer than we think. And this is actually very good news for real estate people. It might be bad news for finance people, but it's good news for real estate people, because real estate people will be the winners in this type of market, because you're going to have to operate better, because operations is where you're going to get the greatest percentage of your return. So like in the last cycle, when we had low interest rates for 20 years, in that cycle, 70% of your gains was cap rate compression, 30% maybe was income. Now it's going to be exactly the reverse, where the operators that know how to squeeze the last dollar out of NOI. And when I say squeeze, I want to be very clear about something. AI and other tools are going to make it very efficient. The way you're going to make money is growing the top line, not just saving money at the bottom line. And you need to create your own demand. You can't take the market. You need to make the market. You need to make that market of demand for your real in all forms, including self-storage.
So with that being said, because like we had Brett Henry on a while back, and he's like, the one thing about storage is you can't really create demand. Like it's such a needs-based type of asset class where it's a divorce or you're moving or whatnot. So speak to this piece around building demand, number one, and then secondly, there's demand, and when does demand come back? It's like you pointed out now, but you had people stand up that were in 2 and 3% mortgages, and you're like, "You ain't moving. You ain't moving. You're the problem."
Well, that's right. So your job is tougher because your primary source of self-storage people are people selling their single-family homes. So go find demand someplace else. And you know where you're going to find that demand? You're going to find it in small businesses because self-storage demand isn't just single family. It's also a storage area for people that are in small businesses. And a lot of those small businesses are typically looking at small bay industrial. Maybe they should look at your units instead because some of your units could work for them better than some of the small bay. It might even be a better bargain for them. So I'm a big believer in creating demand. And creating demand means looking outside the box of where your usual suspect tenants come from.
Let's go back and talk about Kevin Warsh, new Fed chair, and what you're hearing from people, especially investors across the globe. Are they excited about that? What are their thoughts? Where do they see things moving?
Well, Kevin Warsh was an excellent pick. By the way, and I say this just matter of fact, I was a big fan of Jerome Powell too. And you know why? Because I think they're both steady hands at the wheel. I think they're much more similar than they are different. And do I want lower interest rates? You're darn tootin'. I want lower interest rates, but not in this environment with inflation still there and getting a little bit worse. And I think Warsh is sophisticated enough to be able to manage that. Now, he did say he wants to have a new measure of inflation, and I forget the precise word, but it's like stripped inflation, which takes out the top end and the bottom end of the most volatile items and looks a little bit better. I think he is under some political pressure, and I don't like to talk politics, to lower rates maybe in his first go. I don't know that he will. I think he may, to show independence, might not do that. But nevertheless, he is trying to use new measures of inflation to give him academic grounding to be able to lower rates if he does so.
Okay, what I'm trying to get at, and let's maybe do it this way. Let's say that I'm one of your investors. We're sitting down at the table and we're having a conversation. Where are you telling me to put capital right now and why?
The first question I ask every investor is not your cost of capital, but your time horizon. So I just left NYU, and that's why I'm still wearing this NYU pin. You see that? I always get a pin. And I just left NYU for a data center conference. And what's what we were talking about? We were talking about what's the exit? What's the time horizon? And if you have an infinite life vehicle like publicly traded REITs, you have no exit. It's just a perpetual life vehicle. And so if we're into perpetual life, I like those asset classes that have long-term durable demand drivers. And you know where you have durable demand drivers? You have assets that have durable demand drivers around the 5 factors of awesome. Okay, I'm going to get right down to it. Capital, human capital, live, work, play, infrastructure, and foreign money. If you see clusters of those 5 factors of awesome in a submarket, buy everything. I have some investors, including investors in self-storage, I might add, that don't buy self-storage. They buy a submarket, and if self-storage is in it, they'll buy it. Buy the submarket before you buy an asset type.
That's good. Okay, so I'm going to find a submarket, and I'm just going to sort of spread my capital around at different assets based on their size.
I'm going to be very specific about this one. So I was just with a friend of mine who's the CEO of a publicly traded REIT and an office REIT, and he walks me through his building. And he said, Spence, what do you think about this restaurant? I'm like, well, it's really nice. It's cool. How long is it open? He goes, well, we keep it open until midnight every night. I'm like, well, what do you do on Sundays and Mondays where there aren't that many people in your building? He goes, I still keep it open. I'm like, how do you do that? I own it. That's how. This is an office guy that bought the retail establishment in his building to create demand because the single best amenity in office is other people. And other people isn't just the people in your office. It could be outsiders as well. And so from my perspective, one of the challenges that many of my investors have had in Chicago, to pick a market, is they bought this beautiful building, but the retail around their building suffered. I said, buy the retail, operate it, because you'll make your building worth more. And in a self-storage context, I believe strongly that people should be improving the area in the areas that will create demand for your building.
That's good. We can go down that path maybe in a moment, but I do want to get your thoughts on this because you talk about the 5 factors of awesome. One of those, human capital. There was a great piece in the Wall Street Journal a couple weeks ago that said for the first time since 1935, there's got more people leaving the United States since 1935. And you look at immigration numbers, 2020 to 24, you had probably 2 million people coming across the border. That was down to almost zero. How are you thinking about that? And talk about
There's both a macro and a micro answer to that. All right. Let me give you the micro answer first. The micro answer is because of the decline in immigration, in particular, which is a significant driver of American population. You're seeing some weakness in some segments of multifamily, like B and C multifamily, that you might have seen strength. So that's a micro direct impact of a lessening in immigration. But from a macro standpoint, it goes right back to my prior answer. You want to find those submarkets that the population is increasing, where the wealth is increasing, where the values are going up. Why? Because that's where they're going to have demand for self-storage. And when there's macro weakness, my favorite type of market is one that has macro weakness but micro strength, because those are the markets that are going to have a thinner institutional buying pool, but give you the best demographics around your real estate that might exist in a better market and you'd be paying more for it. So I don't worry at all about a declining population. Do I want more skilled immigration? Of course I do. Do I want more immigration overall? I do. So I'm not hiding the ball, because that's going to help drive growth. But we have political issues behind it, and I'm not going to get around them right now. What I am going to say is don't let them distract you from what you do. And what you do is you buy the best self-storage where you can. And then there are lots of markets, particularly lots of sub-markets that are growing, that are getting wealthier, that have great interest in your product.
what I'm hearing you say is, Chris, go focus on West Palm Beach with Mr. Ross and just ride his coattails. So is that a fair assessment?
If you're going to ride somebody's coattails, he would not be a bad guy's coattails to ride.
No, you would not. You talked about, hey, Chris, the operator is the one who's going to win. I want to get your kind of just litmus test on this and what that looks like for you. As you are well aware, you've got Extra Space and Public Storage doing great third-party management. There's others out there. Let's focus on those two. Public Storage is really focused in on, they just had a new joint venture with Welltower. They're going to be very data centric, really honing in on, they're calling it PS 4.0, AI, less humans, more automation. Where Extra Space is saying, hey, look, we want more bodies inside of our sites, because people want to come, they want to touch and feel, like you said, see their spaces. I just want to get your take on it. If you're going to pick someone to third-party manage, or what thesis do you think works here? And from an operations standpoint, do you feel like, hey, those are the guys to go with? Go build the sites, let them operate it, because they're going to be the best at improving the NOI anyway.
Well, the reason why people got into self-storage, the institutions got into self-storage in a big way starting about 15 years ago, was because they were able to take this, what was a, to use the term of art, mom and pop business that were inefficiently managed, and made them more efficiently managed. And AI and property manager tools are just going to make them more efficient to manage, right? But that is a diminishing return. Goes right back to what I said earlier. You need to grow the top line. You cannot win by growing the bottom line of just reducing costs, because that ultimately you're going to be as efficient as you can get. But the top line is infinite. You can grow renters to the moon, and you need to figure out how to do that by creating and capturing a disproportionate share of demand.
So let's reverse roles for a moment. Let's say you are developing self-storage. We just touched on West Palm Beach, which I'd love to get your thoughts on that legitimately for storage. But you're going to sit down and you're like, all right, Chris, I'm going to pick 10 markets based on my 5 factors of awesome to go build self-storage. Where are you going?
I'm building now. If I could build in San Francisco and in New York City, I'd be backing up the truck. I'd be building in the highest density neighborhoods in Los Angeles and backing up the truck. The places where it's really, really hard to build, that's where I want to be. I want to go exactly to those places where a lot of your investors are walking away, because those places have durable demand drivers that will last over the long term. When you go into the more popular markets, the Southeast, the Southwest, and Texas, okay, there's a little bit of overbuilding in some of them. And so I want to go to places that has less new supply, because using a quote, to quote myself, new is the new. And people always want new. And you put a new self-storage in one of these high density, durable demand driver markets, they're going to beat a path to your door.
Very well said. So are any of your investors asking you about California?
Yes, they are. Because my investors are looking for the best risk adjusted return. And my investors, I tell you, you know where you get the best risk-adjusted return? Here comes real estate 101. High demand, low supply.
Yeah.
San Francisco.
Thank you for taking a page out of Sam's sales book and just keeping it simple. Supply and demand, supply and demand. That's the name of the game. So I do want to touch on San Francisco. I don't know if you've been there lately or not, but if you have, what have you seen? I hear the new mayor's doing some really, really good things. Obviously, office is starting to boom again because of AI. What's your thesis there?
Look, I go to San Francisco a lot. I'll be there in a couple of weeks. My son spent all of last summer there, so I went there several times. And I'm telling you straight up, this has nothing to do with your question. The best food in the world is in San Francisco. And that goes to one of my 3 factors of awesome: live, work, play. Unbelievable city. I love San Francisco on a personal level. And I know there's been some political changes there, which may make it more business friendly, which is good. But look, you also have the most highly educated population. 72 cents of every AI dollar goes there. And San Francisco, like Austin, Texas, and Boston, those 3 markets, San Francisco, Austin, Boston, are always the 3 most volatile markets in the country. Guess who's on the upswing right now? San Francisco.
2 more questions for you, just to respect your time, because we really appreciate it. I want to get your thesis on nearshoring and what's happening there, because you talked about that in Napa.
Well, I'm a big believer in manufacturing, and I think that I can show you statistics that show just how much of it's coming back. I'm also bullish on it in, believe it or not, Southern California. I mentioned it earlier in this show. I'm doing a gig in 10 days in Los Angeles, and we're talking all about how the manufacturing of high-tech space stuff is coming back to Southern California. Now, I would say that is a outlier. I would say a disproportionate amount of the manufacturing is coming to the Midwest. I just did a gig in South Carolina near Clemson, where they have that whole auto manufacturing corridor. And that's what you need, is you need a critical mass. And so in San Diego, going a little further down the coast, they have what's known as blue tech, where they leverage off of the Navy and create high-tech gear for naval uses. LA, listen, that's where Howard Hughes had the Spruce Goose, if you want to go all the way back to the day, right? That was the hub of the aero manufacturing business in the country. So there's still some remnants of it. And so I'm optimistic we can bring it back. I went with my wife to Santa Barbara last year for a nice little staycation, and then the earth shook, and it was the loudest noise I ever heard. It was a rocket launch that was 30 miles up the coast in California. So there's real reason why California can do it.
Great stuff. Anything else you want to add or share we haven't talked about, Spencer?
All I would say is that this is the best time to be in real estate in my career, because it's an operator's market, and an operator will create demand. And you got to create demand by looking outside the box of the usual suspects of your typical tenants. Grow the top line. Obviously, you need to focus on the bottom line and AI and improving expenses, but the top line is productivity, and productivity wins.
That is fantastic. If people want to reach out to you, Spencer, because again, you did such a great job in Napa, and someone wants to hire you to come speak at an event, how can they get a hold of you?
Very easy. I would follow me on LinkedIn and DM me, or you can email me at spencer.levy@cbre.com. But the easiest way is to link in with me, DM me, and I'm responsive to everybody.
Thank you very much. Again, Spencer Levy does an outstanding job. Great stuff there. Want to be respectful of his time. Enjoy New York, my friend. Hopefully I'll see you when you come in 10 days.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, man. All right, this is a Self-Storage Report. I'm Chris Berg with Abernathy Development. Again, subscribe to the show, please. If you've got any land in California and Arizona, please let me know. Let us see if it works for self-storage assets for us. That's it. Have a great day.